that works out actually perfect for me, although I stole my own opening line. So I want to thank all of you for being here, and I'm very grateful and gratified to be included in your conference and your program. And my joke always is that I have the distinct honor of being the shortest governor, I am sure, by far in the country. But as New Mexicans know, I make up for that in spades by being incredibly long-winded. So we'll get right to that. I'm going to start, I've decided to start in kind of a weird place, because as we're talking about strategies that work, and trying to, I hope today, talk about don't just keep reacting to Trump. Think about things that we can run on and win on, show that we are succeeding in any number of places, including the West and Southwest. But I want to give that some perspective, right? I am a border state. I am a majority minority state. I'm one of the poorest states in the country. Those typically are not aspects that give you great opportunity out of the gate with a president who gaslights on diversity, minorities, and the border. Puts you in a very interesting perspective. Now, I served in Congress for 3 terms before running for governor. And so I also, at the last term, was the chair of the Hispanic caucus. So no stranger to how difficult this administration was going to be on immigration. And nobody had to tell me pre-announcement from the White House that we're going to go after blue states and we're going to make immigration so sticky and difficult that those governors or Democratic elected officials in any of those states cannot and will not succeed. All right, so that's the climate that I'm in every day, and this is what it looks like. While New Mexico actually has a small part of the border, the towns around that border are incredibly small as well. And in fact, while I want to talk about that a little bit, we're doing much better economically because I've got a brand new short governor who's clear about choices and policies and getting things done. These rural counties, some of them, and communities have the highest unemployment rates in the state and are incredibly challenged on the best day ever. And so as we're seeing a surge of migrants at the border, and they're coming in an area primarily, if you're watching the news, called the El Paso sector. That sector is about 30 miles from a city in New Mexico called Las Cruces. But there's also a place called the Boot Heel. There's all of these ranchers, farmers who are feeling really like nobody has any idea what their lives are like anymore. And in these tiny towns that are 3,000, 5,000, some of them 200 people, when 300 to 500 migrants are left at a convenience store or a filling station in one of those communities, what do you think the reaction is? It's exactly what this White House wants. Fear, anger, panic, and another reminder that people have been left behind, and then we're not paying attention to Americans who are living in these rural communities. So this is now what I want to talk about. Given that reality, I have to do something about it. I have to do something about it every single day, knowing full well that it's a trap no matter what I do. So I stay out of the federal politics on immigration, except for this. It is their responsibility, and they won't do it. Elected officials who take every single responsibility and don't point fingers actually get things done and make a difference, even in the hardest to serve situations and constituents in the state. So my state is actually providing grant funding to every single community, and my staff are on the border every single day. Law enforcement officers, public health officials, other doctors and nurses, staff who are providing services, firefighters, and we're making sure that as we stand up nonprofits, because that's how it works. No matter a surge, no matter what's going on with immigration, nonprofits, the faith-based community for decades, has helped asylum seekers and refugees and figured it out. But when you have a federal government that stands in their way, They're hard-pressed to make it work. And so we're making sure that we solve the problems in those gaps: travel arrangements, transportation, getting asylum seekers to airports. And in a state like mine, that's no easy trick, because I don't have enough flights leaving from anywhere, including our biggest city, Albuquerque. But I solve those problems every day, and while I do that and stay out of the racist, anti-immigrant rhetoric, I have a chance to reconnect with my constituents and voters in areas that are very difficult to demonstrate that anyone is willing to step up and make a difference. And I think this is a message for governors and for all of us in figuring out what we do in 2020 and what worked in 2018. And so when I announced that I was running for governor, like so many states in this climate, our state was in real trouble. And again, I mentioned to you that New Mexico's a tough place. And we're only 2 million people, one of the poorest states. If you looked in the last 4 years at any ranking, we're last. Public health, education, healthcare access, unemployment. We were, Alaska and New Mexico went round and round. And it's a terrible thing to say about a state that all I see is opportunity. I love this state. That's why I ran for governor. I love it. And I made sure that I demonstrated that every single day in my state. But in a state that has that situation, the sort of whispering is, thank God for Mississippi. Thank God for any other state that has the same deep poverty issues that we do. Well, this is the most outrageous way for people to feel about anything, this hopelessness. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Trump election in 2016 and the Trump administration continues to really fuel that fire. It's back to, you've been left behind. Everyone's been left behind. And that's because nobody plays by the rules, so I'm not going to either. But in that way, I will lift you up. I chose the opposite path. I see nothing but opportunity for all of us. I don't see anyone left behind. I see a government that failed to seize on opportunities. And I made really clear on the campaign trail that there were any number of ideas and policies and problem solving. In fact, day to day on the campaign trail, I tried to do problem solving in the context of every single community effort, which really made a difference. And if you saw what happened in New Mexico, it was a huge blue wave, and particularly for minority women statewide, winning by the biggest margins ever in the history of the state of New Mexico. Problem solving, I see nothing but opportunity and potential, and this is a state who has long been forgotten by elected leaders who don't seize on those opportunities. So I want to tell you about a woman that I met on the campaign trail. Her name is Gladys. Now, Gladys is a woman who, in fact, picked this little community that's besieged now by migrants coming across the border. It's a little town called Deming. So if you're watching all the national news, you are familiar with Deming. And I was doing a campaign stop at a senior center, and that's what I used to do, senior services. So I'm thinking I'm going to have nothing but love and support. And there's a woman, Gladys, she's got her hand up before I even start speaking, because it's clear she doesn't want to hear anything I have to say, right? Because people are tired of us telling them all that we know, all that we're going to do. Although I think if you give us a chance to identify those good ideas, that you'll actually be more with us than you aren't. But this was Gladys's point. She raised her hand, I stopped what I was doing and called on Gladys, and she told me, I've been in Deming for 30 years. I chose this small town. And I am so demoralized because we're 50th in education. And I think about my whole family that came here with me and what I did to my children and my grandchildren who didn't get a fair shake because New Mexico's education is so bad. And I just want one thing from you, and I said, yes, ma'am. She said, just tell me we'll be 49th. That's pretty telling, isn't it? That she'd given up. And I said, Gladys, I won't do it. We're going to be number one. We have to stop feeling like we can't succeed. We can succeed. So I developed any number of policies, showed them how they would work no matter how small that community was, how big that community was. And by golly, we're delivering all the time. So while I don't ignore the border, I don't engage in that political fight. I just solve those problems. And in the meantime, we campaigned on everything from being the clean energy state, the aerospace state, the cybersecurity state, the bioscience state, the value-added ag state. We're going to be the everything state. And in fact, people said to me, pick a priority. You have to have a priority. Everything that makes us successful is my priority, right? Every single one. It's a trap. People want you to do everything, and they want you to do it well. And why can't we? And why shouldn't we? So that's exactly what we did. And when I was on the campaign trail and I talked about clean energy, I climbed one of the wind turbines, which, by the way, has anybody here climbed a wind turbine? You have? So, they have those rope assists. There's a guy in the back that's done this. And I'll bet the guy in the back who's done this, 6 foot? Yeah, aha. So they calibrate these things for people who are not 4'10". And so the climb is, and I'm a 60-year-old woman, so the climb assist is something that's both for efficiency, so you can get up 23, 26 stories of a ladder, and so that if you get tired, like a 60-year-old human being might do, that you don't just fall to your death. Sounds good. I want that rope assist. I'm all in. I want to be efficient, and I don't want to fall to my death. We're halfway through the campaign. I can't use it because that thing is calibrated so that for a normal size, human being like you back there, and it just kept knocking me off. So I had to take it off, and our political campaign crew had Dominic, what would you call that? My guy who was my campaign manager is here, a heart attack. Tried to prevent me from doing it, and little engine who could. You know what? I can climb all the way to the top. It's exactly what I've been saying to New Mexicans throughout the campaign. We can, all of us, climb to the top. And so in doing that, in demonstrating what it is, showing people what it is on the ground, and that wind turbine in a small, tiny mining community. So our last legislative session, 60 days, we are now the clean energy state. There is more wind and solar investing and operations in place in New Mexico than any other state. We passed legislation that said we would be carbon-free by 2045, including our rural electric co-ops who have some little more flexibility to make sure that they get there. But get this, 2 weeks after we signed the bill, we've determined through our largest public utility that we will get there by 2040. So we've beat ourselves. And how did we get those rural? Thank you, ma'am. That is worth clapping for. It's the most robust renewable portfolio standards in the country, and there's a $20 million equity fund that goes right to the workers in those fossil fuel industries, because they get hurt, and we always say, we've got your back, but we don't, because what are they going to do? So we're going to give them $20 million, and we're going to do it together so that money's coming in, they're part of the solution, and we're figuring it out. And I'm going to tell you that that whole county, which is largely natural gas, is going to be an outdoor recreation community that's going to show I'm so competitive. Colorado, why bother? The Rockies start in New Mexico. Don't even bother. We're just going to kick because we're getting it done. And you show that vision, people do it. So I'm fishing, and I'm hiking, and I'm touring. So we're doing outdoor. Richard Branson, just in New Mexico, teeny, tiny state, poor state. The very first commercial space flight in the world. Gonna happen where? New Mexico. And all of their operations have moved over. And in fact, 3 companies are competing to get the very first commercial space flight in New Mexico. We're leading in cybersecurity. We are leading in the film industry. I didn't need something dramatic and wrong to happen in Georgia. We were beating them without that. All right, because we've got a balanced approach to a tax credit that also rewards companies for the thing that we worry about when we do tax investing. Will they stay? Well, in my state, they got to stay for 10 years or they don't get all of the pieces. Let us build a system around film. We're now showing films everywhere in the state, not just in the urban areas. And in fact, we have 2 hubs. Netflix, $1 billion over 10 years, and we just announced NBC Universal, $1 billion, 10 years, jobs starting immediately. We're putting $1 billion, thank you, into infrastructure. We are doing all of it. We said we would do bioscience. It looks like our university, the Bioscience Center of Excellence, has found a cure for Alzheimer's. If you set a marker and people see you succeed, people will rise to those expectations, and we have forgotten to do that in elections because we get challenged that we're policy wonks, that we aren't really relating to people. Well, you're relating to people. If you're 50th in education, give them something they can relate to. A moonshot for education. That's what New Mexico's going to do, and we've got the largest set of investments that are full of the right kind of policy initiatives, including universal, I didn't quite get all the money for that, but I will, for universal child education, because without that, we don't have the cornerstone to do what we need to do in public education. But what we've created, both from a campaign and from governing, is a brand new sense that New Mexico's always had this opportunity. So how can the West be one and stay in that place? How can the country, in my opinion, be one? We just have to remind people that we have nothing but opportunity. We have a tendency to be mired, particularly today, when it is so angry and hateful and racist and ugly and unfair, to then be in those places. And if you're in those places and you're in that space, I would submit to you that it's nearly impossible to motivate people, independents and Democrats and moderate Republicans, to decide that they can be part of something different. People, when I was first starting to run at a very conservative Rotary Club, who asked me to come and present to them. And I did. I'd just gotten elected to Congress. And question from the audience. And the audience question was, don't you think government is too big? And I said, I think it's the wrong question. Nobody really would care if it was too big or too small, and it should always be efficient, no matter how much money we had in a particular set of circumstances. What people care about is whether it's making a difference in their lives. Why don't you talk to me about how government could make a difference in your family's lives? And so I want to end with this. You know, we went to every community. We had relationships with folks. We did real-time problem solving, whether that was supporting a caregiver or dealing with a hospital issue or making sure that everybody was adequately covered by Medicaid. We were just doing it in real time. And I just told it to voters straight. And when I did that about how much opportunity we really have in our incredible state, I told them my story. And in the telling of that story, I told them theirs. And if we can do that across the country, I feel very good about the opportunities for 2020. And I feel very good about the West and the Southwest holding that effort and showing that states that largely had been forgotten because we're too small, not enough electoral votes, not enough investment, that we matter, that we're making a difference, and that we can help every state make the kind of elected differences that you are working on today. So, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate this opportunity so much. And for that guy in the back that's 6 foot tall, dang it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.